The nature of industry to maximize profit by reducing input and labor costs shows a high propensity for the mechanization of labor. Since the Great Depression, this has been the case. The only reason technological unemployment hasn't consistently risen universally in the long term is because technology has also facilitated the introduction of new employment sectors with an adjustment period in between for laborers. In fact, the Great Depression, which was triggered by a lot of things, was also an adjustment period to mechanization. There were new skills that were learned by people that were unemployed as they adapted to the rapid increase to mechanization during that period of time. However, the rate of increase for technological development seems to pair up with Moore's law, if you are familiar. And that has to do with the exponential expansion of the capacity and size of technology. We're going to apply this in a broader sense. In other words, new employment sector skill adjustments, being the amount of time required to adapt to new emerging employment sectors, would need to be on pace with applied technological advancement itself. For example, today, 95% of America works in the service industry. Excuse me, it works in the service industry, often now in front of computers. People had to learn to do this, right? Being computer literate is almost a prerequisite for everything we do now. So there's a learning process, and that takes time. Loosely speaking, this adjustment period would need to increase at the same rate as technological change. There's no evidence this is happening. Technological process is leaving the human labor market behind. I believe that the reason new emerging sectors have consistently come about to save the human labor market as each sector gets replaced by machine is because the rate of change in technology was not that dramatic at that point in time. It hadn't sped up as fast as it is now. The human mind and body, which hasn't really evolved that much in thousands of years, now has to compete with its own creation. Mechanization is leaving us behind. In other words, we cannot adapt to the speed of applied mechanization. However, that's only one side of the coin. The costs of computer technology, which is the backbone of mechanization, is now becoming exponentially cheaper as well. The first mass-produced calculators were about $100 in 1949. That's $736 adjusted for inflation today. A new digital pocket calculator can now be obtained for $1 or less, if not free. Here is a chart done by Ray Kurzweil, who does brilliant research in technological trend analysis regarding the evolution of computer power and cost based on millions of instructions per second. In 1990, we had 1 million instructions per second for $1,000. 10 years later, it was 1,000 million for $1,000. 10 years later, it was 1 million. And by 2020, it will be 1 billion million for the cost of $1,000. If we apply this pattern to technology as a whole, and by the way, again, this is speculative, but we do see most everything reducing in cost based on the efficiency of production. And if we apply this pattern to the whole of applied invention, this means it is simply a matter of time before the corporations can no longer rationalize their moral obligation to maintain their employees for the sake of the system. The cost differential between giving a human being a living wage versus automation will be far too dramatic. It will be far too cheap to mechanize. Of course, economists will argue this, and they'll say, oh, there's a trickle-down effect, and since the cost of production is consistently becoming cheaper, the cost of goods will become cheaper, and therefore purchasing power requirements of the individual becomes less. Sure, this might be historically true. I guess you could call it efficiency-based devaluation. However, that competitive decision is entirely contingent upon the whims of the manufacturer. Therefore, there is a contradiction of motives. Remember, they get the machine so they can cut costs, so they can make more profit from their current price structure. Once this occurs, we're going to see more unemployment and more instability. And sadly, instability is often the prerequisite for social change. The problems constitute what we call biosocial pressures. The more destabilized things become, the more motivation there will be to seek an alternative. Of course, this is a delicate balance.